journalist with Reshut Shidor Anglit, soon to be working at I-24. I just want to start by saying if I had a shekel for every time over the last 20 years that an editor asked me to do a story on is the two-state solution still an option or is it dead, it's safe to say that would be greater than my salary and the salary of those journalist friends of mine that still get salaries. So this is not a new issue, but I think right now we are really entering a new reality in terms of the two-state solution. Just very briefly, it's true now we have a government of which Amir is part of, in which I think it's safe to say a majority of that government, certainly the Knesset representation, including the majority party, really does not believe the two-state solution is an option. That itself is not, I think, a new situation. I think in the first Netanyahu government of the 1990s, you might have made that argument. But really, for the first time, we see members of that government actively promoting measures and steps which would basically render the two-state solution not a viable option. Certainly, there is the Hoka Hesderim, the arrangements bill, which is now making its way very quickly through the Knesset, which will allow the government, it does many things, but will allow it to expropriate private Palestinian property for the expansion of settlements. Beyond that, there's even more radical proposals to annex areas of the West Bank under current Israeli control, but not Israeli sovereignty. And that is a very serious proposal. There are serious people in the government who are pushing for that, and certainly that would render what we think of as a true Palestinian state not a viable option. Even more dramatic, the changes in the United States. We have a government coming in, Donald Trump. I'm not going to even speculate what his position on the two-state solution is. It changes every day. Just this week, he suddenly presented himself as a peacemaker. But I think it is safe to assume that the incoming government, based on some of the advisors that we already know are part of the transition team, will be the one most capable of turning away from the previous American position of support for the two-state solution, and certainly previous American position of I would say, safeguarding the two-state solution through criticism and oversight of Israeli settlement building. This is a hugely dramatic development, I think. And then we can't leave out the Palestinians. I would say at no time since the Oslo Agreement, and I think even those people who are for the two-state solution would probably agree with this, at no time since the Oslo Agreements was instituted do we have a government, if you even want to call it a regime, a Palestinian regime in the West Bank that is less capable of delivering any kind of acceptable Palestinian state for just about any Israeli government, or any two-state solution, not only in the Gaza Strip, but even in the West Bank. And just yesterday, by the way, Mahmoud Abbas had canceled a visit to Jenin, and I didn't know this at the time. It's been 7 years since he's actually even stepped foot in Jenin over concerns for his safety. So we'll question not only Gaza, which he certainly couldn't deliver, the West Bank, but whether this Palestinian Authority could even deliver the West Bank in support of any kind of two-state solution. So things are, I think you'll agree with me, looking pretty bad right now for the Palestinian state. But to quote a brief scene, to paraphrase something from one of my favorite movies, The Princess Bride, there's dead and there's mostly dead. And mostly dead is slightly alive. And let us remember that the two-state solution is still the accepted position of every nation in the world, even Israel, of course, at least formally, but of every nation in the world, still including in the United States. And it is still alive, surprisingly, in the hearts and minds of a majority of Israelis and, even more surprising, a bare majority of Palestinians. The most recent poll that was done by Professor Tamar Herman, Fatah Shikaki, the Palestinian pollster, which was done in August, shows that 59% of Israelis still support a two-state solution. That's counting Israeli Arabs, but if you remove the Israeli Arabs, there is still a bare majority among Jewish Israelis supporting the two-state solution, and 51% of Palestinians. Of course, once you start getting into details of what those states are, the numbers do drop below a majority, but just on that preposition. So is the two-state solution dead, or mostly dead, or slightly alive? I think we have two very good people to discuss this. Really, I would call them the future faces of their party, since they're newcomers to the Knesset, but not newcomers to public life, and they are representing the two major parties in Israel. To my right, Amir Ohana, born in Beersheba, 12 years, working in the Israeli security services, in the IDF, and in the Shabak, a private lawyer. He's a member of the Knesset since 2015. He serves on the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. He is also, I look forward to the day, and I'm sure he is too, when we don't even have to bother saying that he is the only openly gay member of what we call the nationalist camp in Israel, but it's still relevant enough to point that out. And on my left, appropriately, Ayelet Nahmias Verbin, a member of the Zionist Union. She started her political career as an assistant to Yitzhak Rabin, and is then served in the legal advisor's office of the Prime Minister's office. And she has been, for many years, lecturing in schools and across the country on the meaning and memory of Yitzhak Rabin. So certainly the two-state solution agreement is I guess a personal and emotional issue, as well as an ideological issue. So and she also now is a new member of the Knesset in the Zionist Union.
I've been there longer than Amir has.
And longer than Amir, yes, but not by much. But
not by much.
But not
almost
by much.
A year now. I'm joking.
Okay, so I think both for politeness and I think we'll start with both Amir and Ayelet, giving them 5 to 10 minutes to state their opening position. I think we'll start with Ayelet, not just ladies first, but because it makes sense to start with the positive side of the equation. I just have one request for them.
That's very judgmental.
It is. No, I meant in arguing a question, you present the for
the
and
future,
then the
or
negative.
the question of.
But since you raised that, I have one request from you, Ayelet. We hear all the time the why we need a two-state solution. I think that's not sufficient. We need to hear the question the majority of Israelis want to know is the how. And Amir, we certainly understand why not a two-state solution, but the big question that then has to be answered is that what then? Mm-hmm. So let's start with Ayelet, and afterwards, of course, we'll open up for discussion.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, Kalev. Thank you very much, Linda, for having me. And thank you, my friend Amir. We're very, very close friends in the Knesset. We have been rallying for more than a year now, because we've done it a lot during the elections. I think there was always something, I would start off with the negative, if you don't mind, but
sure.
There was always something troubling about the two-state solution, or I would say challenging about the two-state solution. That would be the positive way to go about it. It has always been a challenging question, because how do you actually do it? Is it at all feasible? How do you achieve it? How do you get to the point when you're totally separated, or not even from my perspective, economically, we could never be separated. How do you actually do it? And I think that was also in Yitzhak Rabin's mind, if I'm allowed even to say anything about it, because I don't think what he would have said if he had been with us today, but even then, I'm not totally certain that would be his final goal. He was concerned, I can tell you that strategically, he was definitely concerned about the next war. I think he was very concerned about the fact that, it's missiles flying over Tel Aviv rather than tanks. Unfortunately, we had a very bad casualty this morning in the Armored Corps, where my husband comes from. And it's not even infantry anymore. It's something totally different. If we can relate to what's going on today without any kind of insinuation. But if God help us, this is a terror. These fires going around Israel, we're in a totally different arena. And that is a very challenging question. And I'm not afraid to address this question of why it is challenging. I think 2010 has changed us all. The world refers to it as the Arab autumn. And I kind of tend to refer to it, the Arab Spring. I tend to refer to it as the Arab autumn. Something has happened in the world, and all of a sudden we found ourselves in connected with countries like Egypt because we are fighting, all of a sudden we have the same enemy to fight against. And that is truly a changing world in front of our eyes. On the other hand, and that is probably the most concerning thing from my perspective, you know, going back to 1982, before I go to what is concerning, going back to 1982, everybody tends to forget that in the Egypt Accords, the peace accords with Egypt, there was a whole annex regarding the autonomy of the Palestinians. It was never applied, and as we all know, and that's why we got to the first Intifada, and that's why Yitzhak Rabin has gone to the stage where he said, okay, we have missiles flying over Tel Aviv. We have to get one of the elements that is most dangerous for Israel, we have to get it off the table. He was mostly concerned with Syria and the Palestinians. Actually, he was thinking that he would be able to go forward with the Syrians first and only then with the Palestinians, but history, as we know, worked the other way around. But the thing is that we have a government for the past 10 years not offering any kind of alternative to the two-state solution. Maybe because there isn't. From my perspective, I'm very, very much concerned about any potential annexation, even if it is an active annexation, not a legal one. But I'm very much concerned about annexation because we can truly find ourselves, instead of being in the world of separation, where I think we should be, living in a world of segregation, which we should all be concerned about. And in the Middle East, as we well know, we know that the Prime Minister has an approach, Prime Minister Netanyahu has the approach, and we can manage this conflict. I come from the business world, and I don't know how you manage a conflict of that sort. I know how you manage risks. I know it very, very well. From my perspective, there is no management of the conflict. Because if you do not address it in any kind of manner, if you don't sit with your counterpart, with your enemy, no question, with your enemy, then you get to the third Intifada, which is actually a repeat of the first Intifada, which was basically knifing. I was studying law here on Mount Scopus, and I remember myself getting off the bus on Mount Scopus with having my duffel bags, on the back and at the front, because we were very concerned, coming over Isawiya, there was no question of that. So there is no managing a conflict of that sort. You need to do something about it. So it's very, very elegant and very interesting when you have Egypt a little bit on your side, or more than it has been before. A little bit Saudi Arabia, a little bit potentially of the Gulf countries, of the Gulf state. But what do you actually do about it? Because eventually you're gonna have to be sitting with, be it Abu Mazen, be it Dakhlan, be it, I don't know, God help. Well, I didn't want to say Barghouti, but this is also a question of what's gonna happen in the Palestinian Authority. They're going through amazing, amazing, troubling changes. This could be earth-shattering, and we need to understand what we're doing about it. The interesting thing politically is that the members, now bear with me a moment, the members of Likud party are more right-wing than the voters of Likud. The members of my party, of the Labour Party, are more left than my voters. So what happens is, instead for the center of Likud and the center of the Labour Party to be the stronger, the anchor of the future of Israel, unfortunately my friend Amir and his peers are being drawn to the right, to the Jewish home, to the annexation, to the, oh my God, God help me, not the two-state solution or any kind of solution for that matter. And in my party, we have seen ourselves sometimes being drawn, I think, if any of you are following any of my work by any chance, you could see that I'm, from my perspective obviously, Labour Party, as it has always been. Rabin, addressing the issue, not being afraid to tackle the difficult parts of it, trying to get to a solution. Obviously, Amir, we would agree, and not obviously Jerusalem States United, no right of return, etc., etc. The things that are, from my perspective, are basic Zionist. I keep telling my peers from the left, don't teach me what democracy is. I keep telling to my peers on the right, you do not tell me what being a national and being Zionist means either. And that brings us to the question of how do we, one of the ministers of Likud yesterday told me, always prepared when you are in the government. So I told him, you didn't do what needs to be done to actually make the resolution that you are willing to go forward with any kind of negotiations. I think I can wrap it up with saying that we need to see how we get together. We are very, very close to the 100th year of Israel. It's basically around the corner.
Of the Balfour Declaration.
Of the Balfour Declaration. And no. And also, not just Balfour Declaration, to Israel celebrating its century. We're 69 this year. We're very close. In the nick of time, we're going to be there. You should ask yourself the question, I want to raise my children here. Amir has twins, I have 3 children. We want to raise our children here. How do you actually do it? And that is, I would say probably, I don't want it to be the elephant in the room. I want to have the elephant removed. I like elephants, by the way. But I want it to be removed. And we should address, really, as they call it in politics, the hot potatoes, and not be afraid of them. Thank you.
Amir?
Thank you for gathering here on this day and listening to us. Indeed, Ayelet is one of my closest friends, and I have to say, one of the members of the opposition that I have high respect to.
Thank you.
My friends, Israel is on fire, literally.
Mm-hmm.
There are first evidence that many of those fires were not an accident, but an arson. And assuming that it's not the Norwegians that set those fires, it's very symbolic that we have this discussion on this day, because it brings us to the question, what do those people who set the fires wish for more? To raise a 22nd Arab state, or rather to burn the Jewish-only one? Of course we want peace. I think anyone who in this room who spent, I would say, more than 2 days in Israel realizes and understands how bad we don't only want peace, we need peace. When you take a look at the map, you see how narrow and tiny the state of Israel is comparing to the states that surround it, and since day one we're trying to destroy it, to eliminate it, you realize how bad we need peace. But in order to achieve peace, you need another side that both wants peace and that has the political stability to maintain peace. I am sorry to say that we have none. On the one hand, you see Hamas. Of course, about Hamas, we would all probably agree they do not strive for peace. In section 7 of their covenant, and it is 2016, you can just Google it and find it. Section 7, they yearn to the day when the rocks and the trees, al-shajar wal-hajjar in Arabic, would shout, "Ho Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and slaughter him." A Jew, mind you, not an Israeli. And they do not only say it, that they demonstrate it. Some of the most horrific terror attacks that we have known came from Hamas, including the slaughter of 2-month-old Hadass Fogel in her bed. But my colleagues from the left say, okay, we agree about Hamas, but we do have the PLO. We do have the Palestinian Authority. We do have partners to work with, which are moderate, which are reasonable. And I have to put a big question mark to that too. The Israeli-Arab conflict did not begin, as you know, at 1967. Nor did the PLO. The Palestinian Liberation Organization was founded at 1964. What did they want to liberate Palestine from at 1964? Or rather, should we say, What is Palestine? Is it really Ma'ale Shomron and Otniel, as they say? Or is it really Yafo and Akko and Tzfat and Haifa and everything that we consider as the state of Israel? But my colleagues from the left say, okay, that was back in 1964. They moved ahead. Why don't you move ahead? And I have to put a big question mark to that too. Did they move ahead? When in every pro-Palestinian demonstration, both on European campuses, on American campuses, and even on Israeli campuses, because unlike some say, we are an open, pluralistic democracy that allows and practices freedom of speech. When in every pro-Palestinian demonstration you would still hear the same old slogan, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. What does it mean? You know the map, this is the river, this is the sea, that is the state of Israel. Where does it put us? Anyways, those of us who can't swim. But they say, okay, it's not all Palestinians. Yeah, that's right. It's not all Palestinians, it's not all Arabs, but it is the influential majority. And this is what counts. And when we take a look at the actions and sayings of the Palestinian Authority, not Hamas, let's take a closer look to that. They pay salaries and bonuses even to the slaughters of 2-month-old Hadass Fogel. Salaries and bonuses? Where do they get the money from, by the way? What do they produce? What do they sell to the world that they can pay salaries and bonuses to murderers? They name streets and buildings after the most horrific terrorists. And I'm not talking about just a small alley. The government building in Ramallah is named after Yihya Ayash, aka the engineer, al-Muhandis in Arabic. Yihya Ayash is responsible for the death of more than 100 Israeli children and women and innocent people. And this is who they named the government building after? Is that a partner for peace? And when Abu Mazen Mahmoud Abbas himself flies all the way to Turkey to shake hands and accept Amna Mona as the hero of the Palestinian people. Who is Amna Mona? Let's try to remember. Amna Mona was an Arab youngster who chatted in the internet with 16 years old Ofir Rachum from the city of Ashkelon. And she tempted him to come and meet her. And as 16 years old do, he was tempted and he came. But she didn't wait alone. She waited with 2 gunmen who shot him dead just for coming to meet her. And she was convicted and sentenced to life. But as you probably remember, she was released in the Gilad Shalit deal. We had to release more than 1,000 terrorists that we held just to get one soldier, our soldier, that was held by Hamas in Gaza. And we did it. Not easily, but we did it. The only condition was that Amna Mona could not stay in Israel. She has to go elsewhere. She went to Turkey. This is where she lives to this day. And Mahmoud Abbas, our partner for peace, flies all the way to hug her and accept her and take pictures with her as the hero of the Palestinian people. What does it say about a people that these are their heroes? But, and you did have a fair question, so what is your solution? What's the future? It's a fair question, it's a valid question. I would have to first say, I do believe that many of us, both in Israel and in the world, got a syndrome that is called solutionism. Now, every problem in life, if you just do X, Y, Z, see, it will be solved. You just need to find the right solution. Well, some problems in life, and as adults, many of us know, are unsolvable. At least, shall we say, at this time. At least. I do believe that we will eventually have peace. We will. But I also realize that international conflicts sometimes take more than a lifetime to solve. more than a lifetime. So I would have to accept with all, I wish that we will have it. I wish my children would not have to go to the military. I really wish that.
I don't say that anymore, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, I know.
I wish, but I realize that at this time, there is nothing that we can do to have that. Nothing. Because the Israeli-Arab conflict did not begin in 1967. It would not end if only we withdraw to the 1967 borders. We have two proof from the near history that shows that. We're talking about the Oslo agreements. I'm so sorry to say, but our government, the state of Israel, took a decision in 1993, of course, from good purposes, no doubt, to import thousands of terrorists headed by Yasser Arafat, terrorists that were haunted in Tunisia and wherever they were for being terrorists. And we said, okay, go ahead. Okay, let's bring this conflict to an end. Take your own autonomy, take your territories, take guns, take uniforms, and build yourself. Build a life. It exploded to our face, literally.
Amir, can I ask you to, because I want to have some discussion.
Okay, so one more minute, if
Yes,
I may.
Sure.
That was the first time. The second time was 2005. We completely evacuated the Gaza Strip. As Prime Minister back then said, we have to end this occupation. Okay, we took our soldier out, we took our settlers out, we took the deads out of their graves because we knew what would happen to them if only we would leave them. We assumed, many of us, that they will start to live. They will invest in education system, healthcare system. They will build hotels. They have a beautiful strip by the shore. It will be the Singapore of the Middle East. What did we get instead? Tunnels underneath our villages and missiles that will go further and further and kill more and more Israelis? That was the second time. There will be no third.
Okay, thank you very much. I will open it up to the floor, but I will have some of my own questions. Politicians hate to be pinned down on specifics. I'm not sure I exactly heard the how, so let's take a scenario. You've just become prime minister. I don't know if that'll be next year or maybe in 10 years or whenever, but let's say you step into the office of the Misrad Rosh Memshalah. I want to know in order to make your vision come true, what steps would you be taking that would be different, for example, than the current government?
For instance, initially, I would start off with economic independence, really, regardless of anything else, true economic steps that are aimed to build not just trust, because trust is something that takes, as you said, more than a lifetime to build, but actual steps that will try and create an economy in the Palestinian Authority that is viable. I actually heard two ministers from this government also agreeing with me, thank God.
I think the prime minister agrees with you.
No,
so
but he's not actually, but the thing is...
Actually, I agree with you.
But the thing is to not just talk about it, but actually do something about it.
Okay.
For instance, I will give you an example. Just in recent year, a huge factory called SodaStream, who was employing 74 Palestinian employees in Ma'ale Adumim, needed to move because of threats of international boycott. BDS and boycott, actually. Mm-hmm. It was. And a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful entrepreneurship of an Israeli. And they moved to somewhere very, very close to Beersheba. And he wanted to still employ these 74 Palestinian employees. The government would not let him, even though they went through all the security screenings that were necessary. That is a mistake. You know, the employees were standing the day before that they had to separate from each other, to leave each other's side. They stood, they held hands. I'm sure there are right-wing people employed in SodaStream as well as left-wing people employed. This just doesn't matter, it's just people. I understand the fear. And Amir was stressing out the fear. I am also afraid, when I see my children, children nowadays, it's not like the time that when we were young, and I remember these terrible events that took place, terrorist attacks. The one that I do remember as an 11-year-old, obviously, is Nahmias, when Haran family was assassinated, was slaughtered by terrible, terrible terrorists. I don't want to raise my children to this fear, to the same fear, and they are much more exposed nowadays to to everything that's going on. But
what steps would you take to move toward negotiations with the Palestinians?
But I would tell you something that is very basic. I would actually sit with them. We don't have to sit down. When you sit down, you don't have to sit from the point of agreeing on anything. You don't have to, you don't agree about the maps. For instance, I will give you.
I heard the Prime Minister himself say yesterday at the Jerusalem Post diplomatic conference.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
He's
just saying it. Yeah, but the thing is to say it. I don't disagree with the fact that we have a problem with Abu Mazen. I don't disagree with that. It seems to me weird to just state out the problems all the time. So I will try to recap myself to the solution part. But I'm telling you, it's not just saying it. It's acting on it. It's doing something about it. It's going to Sisi and telling, listen up, we need your help in order to be sitting down together and agreeing to disagree at the starting point. Even Netanyahu, I'm not talking about the two-state solution. We know that we have building blocks that we have had, been fortunate enough to get international legitimacy for. It's Gush Etzion, it's Ma'ale Adumim, it's all the settlements, it's not settlements, the cities close to the fence, to the wall. No doubt about it. We just need to make sure we don't erode this international legitimacy. I want to build in Ma'ale Adumim. I want to be building in Gush Etzion. But the thing is not to erode this international legitimacy.
I understand. You're talking about steps, and I will ask Amir about this, that could be done in order so that the two-state solution is not made less viable. But I'm asking you what you would do, not to criticize what his government is doing.
But I have to tell you, he's not doing it. He's not doing any of it. I heard him call for Abu Mazen and, leaning forward saying, come join me. This is not enough. This is not enough. If you need help, either international or regional assistance, just do it. Stop talking about it. What happens in the meantime is an international figure, for instance, be it France or be it heard about New Zealand initiatives. With all due respect to New Zealand, we don't really. I think it's ridiculous that we should need their initiative to help us. So just do something. Just do something. Really, an action.
Your party,
that is,
I understand. Your party did, or a form of your party did present a two-state solution to then Yasser Arafat at the Camp David, and it seemed we went backwards from that. So again, I'm sorry to try to pin you down.
No, don't worry.
What to try to move the process beyond where it was, rather than just putting a Band-Aid on it.
No, so that's the thing. But we are in a situation when we're hemorrhaging. Okay, we definitely know that no Band-Aid in the world can help what's going on now. So the thing is to actually, first of all, you stop the bleeding somehow. And the way to do it is actually, maybe, it's a photo op or not a photo op, because it's ridiculous. Netanyahu is speaking to Hamas constantly through Molcho, through his lawyer. He's speaking to Hamas, practically doing it. If it's for security reasons, I understand. I can empathize. He's a prime minister. I understand he needs to do that, okay? So if you're speaking to Hamas, then by all means, speak to Abu Mazen and try and do something. Sit with him at the table. You know what? Provide the world with a photo op. But do something that the world can understand, that you don't just actually speak about it, but you're actually doing it. What happens instead is we find ourselves, with all due respect to Security Council in the world, which I think is by all means a double standard, total problematic Security Council nowadays, you will bring Security Council onto you, to your doorstep. And that is something, from my perspective, should not happen. Being Zionist, that should not happen.
Well, let me move to the Mia then on that one, because now what the point Ayelet is making is, okay, even if you, the Prime Minister does say, the head of your party does say he believes in a two-state solution, and whether he even moves toward that is one thing, but I think Ayelet is making the point, why take provocative actions, even if we suggest your thesis that there's no immediate solution, why take provocative or actions such as the arrangement, such as the the arrangements bill, such as discussing possible annexation of, which you may or may not be for, Israeli territory, expanding settlements beyond.
Prime Minister did not discuss that.
Okay, he has not. Okay. But such as, for example,
we are a democracy, you know.
Okay, the Cholka has the ream or expanding of settlements.
But he submitted to the Ohana
right? That's what I'm asking that. Why take provocative actions that hinder the possibility even of a two-state solution beyond even, I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're saying we can't reach a two-state solution and we're going to take actions that make that impossible. Why take those actions?
First of all, when the Prime Minister was talking about the two-state solution, that was in Bar Ilan's speech 2009, and he was saying specifically that under and given the Palestinians' agreement to first end the conflict, second, respect and accept Israel as a Jewish state, third, taking off the table the division of Jerusalem, and fourth, taking off the table the right of the return, which means the destruction of the one and only Jewish state. So, when the other side fulfills those conditions, then he may talk about the two-state solution, which probably I don't see it around the corner, first.
Okay.
Second, many of my Prime Minister and our Prime Minister's party, and I was not born and I did not begin my political activity as a Knesset member. I was a political activist before. My opinions hasn't changed. If they have changed, it's for the right, because reality is something that changes per people's opinion. If you would talk about a two-state solution back at 93, I believe that many Israelis thought indeed it could be a solution. But after those years of terror and bloodshed that we have faced, I think less and less Israelis, maybe including the Prime Minister, I don't know, believe in that solution.
But he said in 2009, not in 2000. He said in 2009.
Actually, he just said it also this week. So his official
well.
position is still the two-state solution.
I do not believe that if he will try to bring it to the Knesset or to his party, to my party, that there will be a majority supporting that.
Okay, that we understand.
If he will bring it to the people.
I don't think. Oh, I'm sure it's not going to work.
Well, I think.
But please, if I may,
yes,
just
finish your point.
Yeah, finish my point. The Israeli-Arab conflict is only for the Israelis and for the Arabs to solve, because we are the ones that we either have to live or die with the consequences. So I do not appreciate the calling for more intervention when you don't win in elections. Okay, we had an elections, the people have said this, what they wanted to say, and it is for us to solve. Now, how do you solve that? How do you bring peace closer? Not by giving up. But, first of all, I do think, and I do agree with the first part of Ayelet's ideas, we should bring more cooperations, more coordinations, financially wise, security wise, in any way. We should build bridges, okay? When I take a look in those factories on Judea and Samaria that some people want to BDS, and you know, I walk in and I do that a lot, and what I see is Jews and Arabs working together, having lunch together, congratulating each other for a newborn in the family, living together rather than killing each other. This is coexistence. And this is what they want to BDS in the name of peace. Come on. The last thing on their mind is peace. Just hurting those bridges and that makes the state of Israel stronger. So I would have more cooperation. We do have some, you know, from only the city of Hebron. There is an export to other parts, to Israel, for 4 billion shekels a year, including marbles and plastics and textile and mattresses. 4 billion a year, that's nice. I would have more of that, more bridges.
Okay,
built.
so we know what you agree on.
Yeah. But of course, we have to be very firm, saying that there will be no 22nd Arab state in the land of Israel. I'm not opposing a Palestinian state. I'm opposing on doing it here on Judea and Samaria. Now, why is that? Why do I oppose to do it on Judea and Samaria? Because I feel very connected, and I think the most people in Israel are very connected to that land. It is our real homeland. You know, when you open the Bible, and I'm not saying it as a religious person because I am not a religious person, but I do have a very high respect to my history, to my people's history, and to our legacy. And you would find them more than 80% of the locations that are stated as the land of Israel are in Judea and Samaria, and of course, East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem, talking about dividing Jerusalem, the place that we have yearned to for 2,000 years in Morocco, in Poland, in Russia, in our happiest moments and in moments of despair. From Rabat to Auschwitz, we still had the same thing on our mind. Next year in Jerusalem.
Okay,
1 minute, please.
Yeah.
Year after year after year, 2,000 years of exile. Next year in Jerusalem.
Okay, I do want to open up the floor. First of all, I want to open up to the floor to anyone who has questions. I'll even allow a statement or a reaction. I will not allow a speech. So first,
that's only for us.
That's only
Sorry.
for you. So you keep it short. It doesn't even have to be a question, but you must keep it short. And I can be very rude and interrupt people if they keep going. So, yes.
Very
Yes.
short. What about Salam Fayyad? He seems to have dropped from the scene, but he was the most logical person.
Here's an option.
Absolutely.
Can you bring him back in or not?
I think that is probably more of a question to Salam Fayyad, unfortunately for us. But I
He was
think
ready.
I think one of the problems that I tend to indicate sometimes about the Palestinian Authority, that they know our history, by the way, extremely well. I've met a lot of Palestinians. I was very impressed with their knowledge of Israeli history, of the Zionist history. Unfortunately, they did not take in, some of them, or the ones heading the Palestinian Authority, they did not take in what we did initially when we came to Israel, when we came to this land, we already had, we had a state. We had the organizations, we had the agencies. We were truly managers of our own future. And in that respect, they got a lot of funds and they did not know what to do with it. And Salam Fayyad was one of the probably very first people that you could actually see who knows what to do with this money. And
But in the bigger question, doesn't that speak to Amir's point? Is that there's no partner for peace? If someone like Salam Fayyad is basically ejected from his government, from the system, by the Palestinians.
I think I'm more of an optimist than Amir in nature. I don't know, but maybe you're a very natural optimist, but in nature you are. Yeah,
I'm just trying to be also realistic.
I can see. I'm a very pragmatic person. If you did not catch it by now, that I did not do my job well. But I'm a very pragmatic person, and I think that we should. One of the problems is that we truly eroded Abu Mazen's power. It's not just him that is a problematic partner. He is a problematic partner, but we also eroded his position in front of the world. And we need to understand that. I've got to tell you, Amir, I'm very much concerned about the incitement in the Palestinian Authority and about the funds that are running to terrorist pockets. I even called upon my party at one point maybe not to go and meet Palestinian officials anymore for a while. But the thing is that I know that it would not bring us anywhere. I'm well aware of won't bring us anywhere. And the thing is that I'm not very much concerned about Abu Mazen stating that he is willing to have a Jewish state with a Jewish majority and to abandon the idea of Jerusalem, of Eastern Jerusalem, as well as the right of return. I'm truly not concerned because I know we're strong enough. I think we are stronger than probably what you're thinking of Israel. We are strong enough to do these things, to sit down to the table and discuss these issues. I feel strategically Israel is truly one of the strongest powers in the region.
I want to ask that as a question to Amir. Ayelet raised it. We are strong, and there has been discussions, a demilitarized Palestinian state, observers along the Jordan border, even your prime minister may have agreed or brought up those issues.
Yeah.
So why not a Palestinian state along some of those lines, which would not be the threat that you claim that it would be?
I think that would be for the other side to respond, because we didn't have, as it may seem sometimes, Prime Minister Netanyahu for the past 30 years. We did have other governments that had those ideas. We know in President Clinton's term, the former President Clinton, he said that he offered the Palestinians 100% of the Gaza Strip, 97% of Judea and Samaria, and we know that we had two prime ministers, Israeli prime ministers, the two Ehuds, that were talking about the division of Jerusalem, as I was trying to say, that is not a consensus in Israeli society. Even Ayelet would agree. And still, they didn't shake hands. They didn't say, okay, let's go for it. Let's end this conflict. Let's bring peace. They didn't say.
But I want to take
That's
this
why I
right
said,
to Ayelet, because this
yeah.
is sometimes phrased with
Yeah.
the maxim, with the saying, the maximum that we offer doesn't even come close to the minimum the Palestinians are demanding, and we haven't even discussed Palestinian right of return in East Jerusalem. He's even talking about demilitarization and things. So how do you respond to that? What's the point? We've learned already that the maximum we can offer is not even matching the minimum. That
Okay,
they
so
accept.
let the most right-wing government ever annex the territories. Why are they doing it? Why are they doing it step by step in the most ridiculous, unacceptable way from my perspective, eroding any kind of legitimacy that we have in the world for the building blocks? Why are they doing it? They're not doing it, and I know that the Prime Minister is very much concerned about any kind of private legislation put on the table, saying that. I was even toying with the idea of doing it myself and presenting it to the government, saying, just do it. They're not doing it because they know that it's not realistic. And if it's not realistic, let's talk about what is realistic. I know that the Palestinians, but they are in shortcoming. You know, they're the weakest one. We are the strong ones. What are we? You know, I don't want missiles flying over Kfar Saba. God help us. You know, none of us want it. But the question is, and unfortunately, they do not have a solution for that. What is viable? What can happen? Now, I don't want to be only criticizing, because as you understand, Amir and I are not only in disagreement, we are also in agreement. So I think what would bring us anywhere, I don't know if it's going to bring us to the two-state solution, but it's going to bring us closer to anything else than the hemorrhaging that is happening right now, is to actually try and sit on the table. I'm sure, and that's not for me to say, but I'm sure that our government is working on the future of the Palestinian heads. I mean, not the heads. You know, it sounds like we're going to be heading them. God help us. But the future leadership of the Palestinian Authority, and well, I'm sure they are. And if they're not, I would suggest for them to work on that. And we should have someone that we can work with.
Okay, I wanted to say we're mainly interested in what you disagree with at the time.
I do beg to differ,
Okay.
as you wanted. This is not the most right-wing party that we ever had.
Government?
Any Mapai government and some of Hamarach governments were far more right than this government. And we had a very wise fourth prime minister, a woman named Amir, which you surely have heard of. And she said, peace will come when the Arabs would love their children more than they hate us.
I mean, I do want to, but Ayelet raised a point, and I want to ask you about that.
She was not Likud.
About the international reaction. Let's even pretend that Donald Trump comes and the whole attitude towards America, towards, for example, settlements and the two-state solution changes. The European Union is Israel's biggest single trading market. I think 33% of the total trade is with Israel. The European Union gives Israel most favored nation status, which means they don't accept for goods from the settlements. There's no tariffs on Israeli exports into the European Union. If the European Union were to take that away tomorrow, the economy here would go into a free fall. How do you respond to say that this is a factor that Israel has to take into account and should be aware? This is why the Prime Minister is opposing things like the Hoka. He's not opposing Hoka history, but he's not supporting it, and certainly not supporting steps like an annexation. I mean, how do you answer that question? It could get a lot worse, especially with Europe.
Well, economy-wise, Israel's economy is very firm, very strong. And in the world economic crisis of 2008 and 2009, not only Have we managed to survive? We've grown. We've shown grown in our markets. Just last week we had we see
We were raised.
No, I'm talking about the. I'm talking about the no aftala.
Unemployment.
Unemployment
Is at record lows. Yes.
is on the lowest records ever, and I would be more concerned if I was a citizen in some European countries than I am as an Israeli. The BDS also is not certainly not helping, but it doesn't really hurt Israel's economy in a substantial way. So I'm not worried about Israel's economy, and I do think, as happens in Israel, as happens in the United States of America, we may see some changing towards this conflict, even in Europe. We may see it. Okay. So I'm not concerned very much. I'm actually more optimistic than I am pessimistic.
I wanted to address the economic question, because definitely the Israeli economy has been growing in the past 25 years, and then that's a huge success. Also a bit of a problem social-wise, because the gaps are growing wider as well. So
actually they're not.
They are.
Okay, but that's the next debate.
Yeah.
So
The UN checks
They
the
are.
genie. You take the genie.
I do check the genie.
Let's
So
not discuss that.
we're
I do
getting
check the genie. I do check the
better and
genie.
better.
The Prime Minister said,
Okay.
he said
Okay.
slightly.
That's the next debate.
okay,
So,
but
but
it's better,
that's
not for the worst.
no. But
Even if it's slight.
The inequality in Israel, unfortunately, is growing. Okay, inequality is growing, and the thing about economy is that it is a very, because we are a world economy, we are a global economy. These things are much more. It's easier to hurt Israeli economy. Just this week, there was information. There was growth in last quarter. But the thing is that in the Prime Minister's office, as well as in the Ministry of Finance, they're saying that the reasons for this growth are not there anymore, because export from Israel, unfortunately, is growing lower. I come from the business industry. It's very concerning. And actually, I've got to tell you, Amir, when it comes to boycott and BDS, I'm not as concerned. I'm much more concerned about markets being closed in our faces, not because of reasons of boycott, just because of reasons of legitimacy, of world legitimacy. But I've got to tell you, I think Israel is strong in every respect. But that is also what allows us to push a little bit forward and be a little bit more gutty. This Prime Minister he's the longest Prime Minister in history since Ben Gurion. This week. Consecutive, exactly. So we are strong. And if we're strong, we are also allowed, on the one hand, not to render in any sort of way our security, which is very crucial from my perspective as well. But also, we are allowed to sit at the table and see what the future looks like, and to draw a future.
Okay, I think there was comments from the audience. So who would like to make us yes?
A question to you: if you would be Prime Minister, would you?
This is the second time I'm asked today. I'm gonna actually think about it.
I'm sure we have two future Prime Ministers. I don't know in what order that'll be. That'll be interesting.
You're looking for another partner in Palestine than Abu Mazen. Would you consider releasing Marwan Barghouti? He seems to be highly popular among Palestinians. No.
This is very depressing. I've got to tell you, I met Marwan Barghouti in 1996 in Ramallah in the Grand Park Hotel, where we were very hopeful. I remember I was very impressed with his Hebrew. And we were a lot of young people from the Labour Party at that point, truly dreaming of the future and dreaming of a different future. I've had Samar Sintilawi, who was, at one point, we were very intensively close. I actually got married thanks to peace, because my husband was working very closely with Shimon Peres in the Peres Center for Peace. And actually, my 3 children are the best thing to ever come out of peace. So I think that is a major question. On the one hand, we're trying not to intervene with Palestinian democracy. On the other hand, I'm not so sure they're truly running a democracy there. So I'm very much concerned about that. So Barghouti, if I'm Prime Minister, definitely that would not be the first option I would be putting on the table. That would not be the first option.
What would be the first option?
I think Salam Fayyad, people of that sort, I've got to tell you something. I believe in people coming from the private sector, not all the time, by the way, to make sure everybody understands my insinuation. Not all the time people who come from the private sector are the better option, but a lot of the times it makes you, in the business sector, you have to be very, very pragmatic on the one hand, and you also have to have values. That's what I believe. You have to have values. So I'm hoping for an option of that sort. But there are some moderate people in the Palestinian Authority that my members of my party, members of my fraction are meeting. I'm still hopeful for someone to rise from what's going on there and to actually be able to come through.
Okay, we have more. Oh, no, please let some other statements. Yes.
I think we can all agree that there's no good solution right now, so I'd like to offer a new perspective, and that's the perspective of education. I come from the world of peace organizations, and that's a world where people actually, Palestinians and Israelis, sit and talk to each other. And Ayelet, you were mentioning that before, Paris Peace Center, and etc. Why not do something simple like invest in education on both sides, invest a lot of money and really make education a way of starting to create peace maybe for the future generation.
Okay, I want to. Amir is in government, so you are. That is something.
For both of you, yeah.
Yes, but I wanted, because Amir is in government, he's the one who could actually advocate for that or something.
First of all, not only I agree, we raised that subject in many debates that we have in the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee with the Chief of Staff, with the Minister of Defense, and even with Prime Minister. We would like, more than I'm concerned about who is going to be the next leader of the Palestinian Authority, whether it's going to be Salam Fayyad or Marwan Warghouti or Rami Hamdallah, which we didn't raise, but it is also an option. Leaders can't just take their people to a whole different opinion of what they think. I'm more concerned about the people that I am about who is going to be the leader. So the only way to change public opinion, it's not the only way, I'm sorry, but one of the most important ways is, of course, education. When you open the textbooks in most parts of the Palestinian Authority, including the textbook of a 17-year-old who went into the house of 13-year-old Halel Rachem, watched her sleep and breathe and slaughter her. When you open his book, you wouldn't find a Palestinian state alongside with an Israeli state. You will see just a Palestinian state. And this is the thing that we should invest in. I agree. We should do more and more of that, and hopefully not only giving money, but teaching peace.
To be fair, we don't invest enough in our children to understand. We're just basically, we feel, in that respect, I think we're a little bit patronizing, and we should be careful with that. I'm trying to think, we're not raising our children to coexist. We're just raising our children to respect the living, and it's very, very important for us. So, but we should also, I agree with you completely, but we should also give a thought, a mini thought about how we are raising our children in respect to Arabs.
I'm being signaled that our time is up, I'm afraid. I started it by saying that I hope that these are basically the future faces of their respective parties, and I think if the level of discussion in the Knesset and government were at the level of discussion that we had here today, it would all be, no matter what the solution would all be better for the country. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question.
Another hug.
Thank you.
Ayelet, this is actually